Jennifer Medhurst. Welcome to the Charlie Law podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's great to have you here. I think that we got lucky, to be honest with you, having you here because I had no idea that you're literally a week or two away from the launch of your new book.
Yes.
So Jennifer Medhurst, AKA the Imperfect Nutritionist and author of the 7 Principles of Healthy Eating, which we're going to get into in a second. But also, you were named one of TikTok's top 100 creators and have built an online community reaching more than 1.5 million people today, which is an unbelievable feat.
Thank you very much.
So I can't wait to dive into all this with you. You've got a lot of stuff happening now. You've got the book that is going to be published very soon.
Yes, next week actually.
Next week,
2nd of Feb.
So you're hot property at the moment.
Yeah.
And you've got lots going on. I think you've got a TV series in the pipeline as well.
End of next year, we're hoping.
Okay.
So actually, I'd just like to clarify, it's 2nd of February for UK and Europe, and then it's 2nd of March for US, Canada, and Australia.
For the book?
For the book,
okay.
Yeah.
And then TV series next year.
End of next year.
On the podcast, we really try and reflect on whoever we're interviewing, that person's personal story a little bit, because I think it really helps inform and inspire people who are listening and gives more insight into sort of why and how you've ended up where you are today.
I had the idea for the book actually kind of 3 years ago.
Okay.
But then it was what happened in the pandemic. So I don't know, maybe if I start kind of like where I am now, which is...
tell us where you are. Where are we today,
So
Jen?
I suppose I started a TikTok account up in the pandemic just as kind of something to do. And very quickly, a couple of videos went viral. And then TikTok was trying to change from a dance platform at the time into an educational platform. And so they were reaching out to content creators on the platform that they liked the content of and asking them if they would like to become the first TikTok partners in the UK. So then TikTok reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to become one of the first TikTok partners in the UK, which I did. So then I started working directly with TikTok, developing educational content for the platform, which was really exciting. And then TikTok named me one of TikTok's top 100 creators in 2020, which was massive. And
Wow.
that kind of helped to really grow my brand, grow my following. And then also kind of coinciding with that, Instagram launched Reels. And as a TikToker, I was very well placed to utilize Reels all of a sudden. And so then my Instagram following grew very quickly. And so this kind of quite small private clinic that I'd had based out of Brewer Street in Soho, then suddenly kind of was expanding massively. And I was inundated with not just people wanting to come and see me, but then also brands wanting to work with me, which I wasn't really expecting because of suddenly all this kind of growth in my social media. And then next thing I knew, I got approached and asked if I wanted to do a book deal. And so suddenly I was in a kind of different area to the one that I would imagine myself being in. And I thought, God, I can't actually manage this on my own because my inbox was just inundated with like emails. And I was like, I don't have experience doing this. So then I made a list of like the best kind of 8 managers in London. I went round and I met with all of them. And there was one in particular, my now manager, Adrian. He's done it all before. He's an absolute legend. He's just got an amazing energy. He's wonderful to be around. He's also Elle Macpherson's agent as well.
Wow, okay.
So he's been...
Is this just the book agent or he manages everything for you?
He's my 360 management agent. And he'd been on with Elle on her journey. And so he was really excited to kind of work with someone else in the health world, but then do it for the kind of TikTok generation.
Got it.
And so I love it. He totally embraced it. He's like one of those like really learning, growing mindset, like always open to new ideas. And so it was really kind of his belief in me that helped me. He was like, right, we're not going to go with the first publisher that we've come across. You're going to do I forget what they're called now, like a book proposal. You're going to do a book proposal. We're going to shop it around. We've got a bidding war going. And then I happened upon...
And that did happen, didn't it?
Yeah, that did happen, yeah. And then I stumbled upon my now publisher, Kyle, who are owned by Octopus, who are owned by Hachette. And Hachette is the second biggest publishing house in the world. So got really lucky then, but I really connected with the team there as well. And so much of life is about the connections we make. You can be fantastic at something, but you also need the right people around you to help support you. And I feel very fortunate that not only I had the skill set thanks to training as a nutritionist, and then I had the fortune of working with TikTok and then with Instagram, and then finding an incredible like agent and manager, and then finding an incredible publisher. They've all these things have
Everything's
come
kind
together.
of, they've all converged, and it's such an exciting moment. So,
Exactly.
what makes you different as a nutritionist then?
So I think, so that's kind of how I've been able to get to where I am today. But essentially, yeah, it probably goes back a lot further to the beginning. And even though it sounds like quite a quick progression in terms of this has all happened in 2 years, the groundwork for that was probably a decade in the making. And initially,
10-year overnight success,
yes,
right?
exactly. Which is, I hear this all the time from other people. There's so much work that goes into these moments. And yes, things came together really amazingly, but also through all that hard work that had happened in the 10 years beforehand, I was in that perfect position to utilize those opportunities and make the most of them. And there were a hell of a lot of failures, tons that
Along the
happened.
way.
And ones that still happen all the time. But I think this is when it's nice to be surrounded by like the right people. And that only happens with trial and error and knowing yourself anyway. But so I initially I trained as a lawyer initially. I did have a law degree from Bristol, and then started my legal training down in London, and very quickly became sick with something called chronic fatigue syndrome, which I wasn't really expecting, and it impacted my career massively.
Was that quite, you were starting training and then you got the chronic fatigue? Was it, do you think, linked to the sort of the stress of actually being in that world?
Well, the thing is, now I obviously understand a lot more about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, it actually started, I think, from 13. I had very bad anorexia when I was 13 and didn't eat properly for a year. And so that kind of started some nutritional deficiencies that were going on. And then I was put on, like most girls, I was put on the pill as well during my teenage years, which again causes more nutrient deficiencies. And so I think there was this kind of gradual decline in my health going on through my teenage years. And then it started showing up at university. And I was very fortunate that Bristol University were very supportive of the fact that I got my chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis at university, but I refused to accept it was a real illness. I was like, nah, it's just some like nonsense diagnosis they give you when they can't work out what's wrong with you. Like, ignore it. And I kind of refused to accept it was a real illness. I had no idea that food had any relationship to your health whatsoever. This is like pre-transformation, I suppose. And so then, went through university with a lot of support in terms of being allowed like to do exams at different times and stuff because my health was so compromised. But again, still not recovering and not really understanding what was going on. And then it was so much more exacerbated when I got down to London because I didn't have that time allowance and that support. And very quickly, my health collapsed. I had to give up my job, move back home with my parents, which is every kind of 20-something-year-old person's dream, to move back home with your parents, and you've just got out and got yourself
just free at last.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really humbling experience, and it got so bad that I was actually bedridden. My mother was washing me and feeding me, and it was an incredibly stressful and depressing time because I'm lying there in bed, and I've always been a fit, healthy, motivated, energetic person. Always been like that. And I couldn't understand how this was now my life. Like, so this is it. I get to lie in this bed for the rest of my life. How am I going to work? What am I going to do? Am I going to be able to get married and have kids? And I just remember going through that losing your health is so humbling. You really don't have anything if you don't have your health. And so I remember this moment just lying in bed in so much pain. You're in a lot of pain when you've got chronic fatigue as well.
Okay.
So you're in a lot of pain. Your joints are hurting. You've got terrible stomach cramps, awful headaches. You're getting blackouts.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people would just assume that you just knackered all the time.
Yeah. You're just a bit sleepy. I had a lot of just snap out of it. You're being a bit lazy kind of thing. And it's so much more than that. And that's another really complicated part of the illness is that you are physically really unwell. You're in a lot of pain. As I said, joints aching, like the burning of your muscles. I remember this intense burning, when you've done a really like full on workout, it was like that from literally trying to pick up a glass of water or something.
Really?
Yeah. And
So what were doctors saying to you and, prescribing you and telling you how to solve this problem?
It was literally like, oh, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, bad luck. That was it. That was the treatment on the NHS at the time. And look, I love caveat this with, I love the NHS. I'm British. I love the NHS, of course. But unfortunately, while the NHS is kind of amazing at dealing with more like immediate things like cancer, heart attacks, broken bones, it's not very good at the kind of like longer term care. And so there really wasn't anything available. I got myself on a treatment program, which was the waiting list was like a year and a half. I think there were 3 centers at the time in the UK that treated chronic fatigue syndrome. The waiting list was like year and a half, 2 years. So in that time, my health is getting worse. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was a friend's father who'd had cancer who recommended that I go and see a nutritionist. And at this point, I've tried everything mainstream medicine has to offer on the NHS. I've tried as many things as I can see in as many books as I could find at the time. Nothing's working. So I'm desperate. And of course, when you're desperate, you'll try anything. So I go and see this nutritionist. And in the space of about a month, I do what he says. And in the space of about a month, I'm starting to feel an improvement. I'm not better by any means, but after years of feeling like the same or worse, like that was incredible to me. So I was like, maybe there's something to this nutrition malarkey. But it was very expensive and hadn't worked for a while. So I then took it upon myself to just focus on nutrition again, just reading as many books as I could and started formulating my own treatment plan for myself based on nutrition and had a kind of total transformation, such a massive improvement in what I was experiencing in terms of my health. And also, a couple of months later, around that time as well, I then got on the treatment program for chronic fatigue syndrome, which is based out of the Center for Integrated Medicine at Great Ormond Street. So yeah, I'd just like to shout out to them because it's a really amazing service that they offer. So I always try and support Great Ormond Street as much as I can.
So that's interesting. So you finally got on that program that you're on the waiting list for. And what percentage of their focus was around nutrition?
It was a quarter. So I'd managed to, if my recovery is a ladder, I'd kind of got myself off the bottom few rungs myself with what I'd been able to do. But the thing is, when you're, and I feel this so deeply with my clients, usually when I meet my clients, they're at the bottom. You're feeling tired, you're ill, your health is compromised. And it's at this stage, when you're at your weakest and most compromised, that you then have to take on kind of totally new challenges. And you're the least equipped you have ever been before to deal with them. And so this is the thing, like I didn't know how to cook. I did not know how to cook anything at all, which is obviously I've basically got a book coming out that's a 2/3 recipes now. So that changed, but I didn't know how to cook. And so I was teaching myself a lot of new skills, but my mind isn't working as it should.
You feel super depleted. So all this new things you got to do,
it's a lot.
Even going to the supermarket and buying new ingredients
overwhelming.
Must be overwhelming. Yeah.
Very easily overwhelming. You say it to a physically fit and healthy person, of course it's no big deal. But yeah, when you're ill, it's a really tough ask. And what was great about the treatment program at Great Ormond Street was, so it's a 4-pronged attack they take on chronic fatigue syndrome. One, the part was nutrition, which I would say in a non-biased way was the major part. But also another part of it that was really important for me was activity management.
Okay.
And it's not something I'd really thought about before. And because of the rhetoric around the illness, this is like over 10 years ago now, but the rhetoric around the illness was very much that, you're lazy, snap out of it, what's wrong with you? So you start feeding yourself in that negative psychological cycle that I'm lazy, I don't do enough, And so you try and push yourself even harder to make up for it because you feel like you are lazy. And chronic fatigue syndrome has these boom and bust cycles. You tend to have a bust cycle where you're feeling really low and you can't get out of bed. Maybe it's a day or two or a couple of days or a week. And then suddenly you feel a bit better. The energy comes back and like, right, I've got to make up for all this stuff that I wasn't able to do when I've been lying in bed. And that actually compounds the issue because you then exert yourself far too much and you cause the bust cycle. So the boom and bust cycle. But what was really great about the activity management part of the course was firstly, appreciate how much I was doing and add a kind of like a point system to everything that I was doing. So things like doing the ironing, you are standing, you're standing up when you're doing the ironing. That is actually physically exerting. So maybe sit down if you're someone that's got chronic fatigue syndrome and try to conserve your energy to use for other things. And it suddenly made me realize like I was doing a lot of stuff and actually not giving myself credit for it. So that was quite nice. Then there's a physiotherapy part of it, which I didn't need so much, but a lot of the people on the course were like not able to move and in wheelchairs and stuff. And then the other part was like more psychological. And I'm a really strong believer in that, like every single illness has a psychological element to it that can, at least a psychological element can help support it
Sure.
at the very least.
And from the just talking about that psychological aspect, if you have chronic fatigue, how would you link those two? Is it more about psychologically you might be holding on to certain things, you might have psychological conflicts or trauma or anxiety around things that are sapping your energy and attention inside your body, that those things need to be released and let go and work through, so to
Yes.
try and recover some of that life force inside you.
100%. And the thing is, I'm somewhat tentative to put too many things out on the table as if they're facts, because this is still something that we're really learning about and discovering. It's not substantiated. But anecdotally, what we do see with people with chronic fatigue is a history of control in the family.
Got it.
Whether that's been through school or through family environment, but it tends to be a common theme that runs through it. And actually, it's really hard to find any illness that there isn't a psychological element to. Even, and again, this is anecdotal, but even cancers, there's certain type of cancers that are associated with certain types of trauma and experiences.
Stress, excessive tension.
Yeah, and I think, and that sounds maybe to some people a bit kind of pie in the sky, but actually the more we understand about the gut-brain connection, which is the link between our gut microbiome, so the gut microbes in our gut, and our brain, the more we're understanding that the two are inextricably linked and there is a relationship going on there. We know that this exists, but we don't fully understand it yet. So this is a really exciting area of research, and there's going to be a lot coming out about this in the years, decades to come. But unfortunately, we don't really know a lot about it. We know general things like such as the neurotransmitters that we find in the brain are also produced in the gut, one being serotonin. So serotonin is the happy hormone. And we find that being produced in the gut. In fact, majority of serotonin produced in the body is produced in the gut.
Really?
But it's not the same serotonin that's used in the brain. So there's all these things that are pointing to this connection. And then there's other evidence that we see, which is that people with certain mental health conditions, such as depression, you find associated with lower microbiome diversity. So this diversity of the gut microbiome is important for other areas as well, potentially.
Got it.
But I mean, there could be other reasons for that, which is maybe depressed people aren't so good at looking after themselves and maybe aren't consuming as diverse diet. But yeah, there are things that are pointing to, well, we know the importance of this connection, but it just seems like when we're looking at health, why, if there's tools that we can use that can help, why not use them?
Sure.
If there's no negative, there's only positive, why not? So.
Sure. So, okay, so anyone listening to this, if they, because, there's a lot of people out there who have chronic fatigue and they're trying lots of different things, and like you back in the day, trying lots of stuff. What would be because we're going to be focusing a lot more on the nutrition in a second side of it, but anyone who has chronic fatigue, what would be your advice to them?
I think trying to get on one of the treatment programs, I believe there are more available now than there were at the time. Or there's actually a very good clinic, private clinic, so you do have to pay for it, called the Optimum Health Clinic. And I send everyone there now because all they do day in, day out is specialize in chronic fatigue syndrome.
So take it seriously and go and see someone that specializes in that, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But good nutrition is always going to be the cornerstone of that. And actually, it segues quite onto my next comment, which is that actually, this is the reason that I wrote the book, because after practicing for a couple of years, I suddenly noticed that it didn't matter who I was treating or what I was treating, whether it was like diabetes or someone that wants to improve their experience during pregnancy. It didn't matter. There were some fundamental things that all people were struggling with. And I thought, how fantastic to put them all together in a book in a really accessible, easy way that I could just hand to someone and they can go off and do that in their own time, at their own pace, and do basically 80% of the work that you need to improve your health in one go without having to go and pay a fortune to see me or any other specialist. And I really wanted to make that accessible because I felt like a lot of the health stuff wasn't that accessible and was really confusing. And I think that's where I've been able to kind of add value to the conversation, is like, one, through my qualifications and knowledge and experience, but two, through having come to it at a much later age. So I've been that normal adult, normal in inverted commas, adult that's kind of, struggling doing a job 9 to 7, struggling to get home, cook something nutritious, but is starving hungry, doesn't really have the time to do this huge radical diet lifestyle overhaul and whatever. And so I wanted to talk to them because I felt like initially when I started out on my health journey, that when I initially discovered nutrition and wellness and wanted to start focusing on it, I couldn't cook. And so I was looking around for recipes and things, and I found the recipes either were using ingredients that like I hadn't heard of, that I couldn't find, that were also really expensive, and they were really complicated to cook, and they didn't taste that good.
Well, there was no picture, right?
And there was no picture. Yeah, exactly. I have a picture for every single one of my recipes.
Very important.
Very important. But I really wanted to start creating recipes with ingredients that anyone can get at their local Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Waitrose, wherever you go shopping on your way home from work. 8 ingredients, so it's not super expensive, that you can cook in about half an hour, that tastes incredible, because I'm a foodie first, and that also happens to be nutritious for your body. And so that's why, and I noticed again patterns, like this is why it's so wonderful being able to have this community online now. People message me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and they're like, I've literally just started cooking your recipes and I feel better.
Wow.
Because the first quarter of it is my 7 principles of healthy eating. And again, I just want to touch on why I did principles, because the diet industry for quite a long time has had quite a one-size-fits-all approach. So, cut out carbs, fats are bad. And I don't believe there is one-size-fits-all approach to diets. I believe everyone is unique and individual. Everyone has their own likes, dislikes, tastes, cultural preferences. And so our diet shouldn't be that rigid. So what I wanted to do is empower people with 7 really easy to understand principles that they can take, all evidence-based, so they're ultimate truths, they're not going anywhere. They can take and then apply to their own life in whatever way that they see fit, and hopefully live a healthier, happier, longer life as a result. And then to kind of help support that, I then made the last 3 quarters of the book just a huge recipe Bible. And I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of the photographer. I had Nick Hopper, who's actually Jasmine Helmsley's husband.
Oh,
who
wow.
I just poured over.
I mean, the images do look amazing. Come on,
Yeah.
let's have a little look at the.
Well, because I'm sure, as you know, like Helmsley and Helmsley and Nick Hopper, they were disruptors in terms of the health and wellness industry growing up, and so I would pour over their images.
It's the colors. That
So many colors, but that was so important to me that you pull people in through. I wanted the photography
images
to be really sensual and sexy and voluptuous and about more. Like, this is not a diet of restriction. This is about indulging yourself and enjoying all the wonderful things that we can include in our diet, rather than focusing on anything that we can't.
And focusing on the big pieces that make the most amount of difference.
I have a very like a positive approach to diet. It's not about what you can't eat. It's about what you can add in. Because a lot of diets are like, don't eat this, don't do that. I actually find like that's not helpful, because naturally also the brain, if you tell it not to do something, it wants to do it. So it's not helpful. So it's much actually better to focus on things that you can do and what we can add in, and kind of almost crowd out the less desirable things in someone's diet. Cooking, I found, represents like an ability to bring people together, which enhances community and connection. Like, I love throwing dinner parties, but I certainly noticed prior to my kind of discovery of nutrition, people used to come in to my dinner parties and kind of tolerate the food. There's quite a famous anecdote from university.
Hang on, is this pre or post transformation?
This is pre-transformation. So I'm still at Bristol at this point.
Okay.
I used to be throwing a dinner party, and I went to Sainsbury's and I just bought a load of microwavable carbonara, which, I mean, carbonara is like one of the easiest things to cook. I can't believe I didn't know how to cook it. Got a load of microwavable carbonaras, stuck it all in a pan, grated up some cheese. And as everyone was walking in, I was sprinkling the cheese on, being like, oh, don't, it's just ready, guys. Awesome.
hence just tolerating it.
Yeah. But I certainly noticed then I went through this whole transformation, had to learn how to cook, and discovered a love for cooking. And then suddenly my dinner parties were much more appreciated by my friends.
I think your lucky friends nowadays coming around to your house for dinner parties.
But I love it. It is like, food is connection. And that's also why it's so important to me that it's enjoyable. It shouldn't be something where we have to eat every single day of our lives, like on the whole. And so it should be something that we enjoy and should be celebrated. And I really wanted to make sure that whatever I was putting out there reflected that. And so in my blog, it certainly reflected that. And initially, I remember like my photography was pretty kind of dodgy. Very fortunately, a very good friend of mine, Amy Smith, she is a professional photographer, and she very kindly offered to give me a few lessons. And then I also discovered a passion for photography in this journey as well. And I discovered.
So what's the secret? How do you make these pictures look so beautiful?
This is the thing. This is why it's not an overnight success. It was 10 years. There was a lot of very bad photos. And I also discovered like I'm a creative in this process as well. Like, I love putting colors together. And so my TikTok and my Instagram, I do all my own photography. I do all my own videography. Like, And the reason I had that skill set to be able to harness it during the pandemic was from 10 years previously from this blog trying to make these photos look half decent. And so that was a really incredible part of the journey. And I also learned that you can be kind of qualified till the cows come home, but if you sell first, you sell your images first. It's like the food that hooks people in. It's got to taste good. It's got to make them feel good. It's got to look good. And then, hopefully you kind of turn them onto the science a bit later, because I found like people aren't really interested to start with. And
what's that saying? Give people what they want and then give them what they need.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a slow burn, although like we as a society have moved on so much from initially when all this started. But so I discovered this passion for photography and cooking, and the blog was going well. And then I briefly had a health food catering business that specialized in fashion and film shoots, which I loved, but was very high energy. And also people started asking me a lot of questions about health and wellness and nutrition. And I realized I don't know anything. So back to school I go for another 3 years to retrain, study nutrition properly, and then come out and start my clinic initially on Brewer Street in Soho, and kind of slowly building it up there. And then the pandemic happened. So I then restructured everything, moved everything online. So I now have a virtual clinic because sadly no one wants to come and see me face to face anymore.
I mean, that must have been quite a big thing. You train to be a lawyer, you spend all that time training to be a lawyer, then you get chronic fatigue, and then you have to sort of move home, then you're trying to solve that problem, and then you get into nutrition and realize there's a sort of convergence of what you're interested in and passion and seeing, the big problem to solve, and you're like, shit, I want to do this properly. So you go and study for that, another 2 or 3 years, I expect, and then you're all of a sudden COVID comes along and you have to change everything.
Yeah, I think there's been so many kind of parts to it, and actually I've kind of omitted the major part, which is really that fundamentally when I did recover, there was a moment. This is why I switched from the catering and decided to go back and retrain. There was a lot of toing and froing because it's such a big decision to go back to school, for 3 years, especially in your late 20s. You want to be getting going and moving forward with your life. But it was so humbling, the experience of losing my health. It fundamentally changed me as a person. And I wasn't the same. And I also felt like really passionate about something for the first time in my life, which was that actually I wanted to make sure that no one felt like I did and wasted their life, their time because of lack of information. That's essentially what it came down to. There are so many things we can't control in this world. Lack of access to good information, information should be one of them.
Particularly in this area, there's so many conflicting pieces of advice.
I think this comes back to my original point about why I've done principles and not a one size fits all approach, is that this is what's true for everyone. These are principles that you take and apply to yourself. And I really want to empower the individual with accurate information to feel confident, because the thing is, you are the best person to determine what works for you. No one else. So I think take ownership over that and always question whatever you're given, whatever information you're given. It's your body. You're the one that has to live with it. And you're the only one that really knows what's going on inside it. So this is why I'm always trying to empower my clients and hopefully empower the reader through my book as well, to take ownership over that and feel confident doing that as well, and to listen to their body. Because I think also where people get confused, they get confused about all this conflicting information, which was actually another reason that contributed to why I wanted to retrain as a nutritionist. Because I was like, God, I want to put good, accurate information out there. I want to understand what's going on and why there's so much conflicting information. Also really wanted to kind of change the way that we look at healthcare in this country, which is like a much broader issue. So it's going to be my life's work, I think. But I want to change the way that you practice healthcare in this country from reactionary to preventative. Now, let me explain that a little bit. It's at the moment, the way that we treat illness is that we wait until we're sick and then we take a pill. We call it pill for every ill society. And we're not really asking the questions in mainstream allopathic medicine about like, why is an otherwise healthy body not functioning optimally? So for me as a nutritionist, I like to take it always one step further and think like, what's going on there, kind of like peeling back the layers, working out what are really the underlying drivers of that, and ideally prevent it from even happening in the first place. Because the best time to deal with like being ill is before you get ill. But it's just not the way that we think in this country. They're a bit more forward thinking on the continent, but but sadly, I think US and UK, we're not great. We wait until we get ill and then we act. And actually, it's so much better to do it early. And that's what I really wanted to do through the book as well, is give people a really accessible, easy foundation that they can take and apply to their life. It's not going to disrupt your life. Like, so many people, when they come and see me in clinic, or before they even come and see, they're like, I would come and see you, but I just don't want to be stuck on rabbit food for the rest of my life. And I'm like, that's not what I do. I'm like, what do you love? They're like, well, I love my pizza, I love my pasta, I love my wine. Cool. We'll keep all of that in there. But what can you add in?
Work with you.
What more can you do? Exactly. And so it's really non-judgmental. It's really accessible. And I think, as I was saying earlier, when I initially started out, I felt like the health elite were being like really catered for. I was like looking on Instagram and wherever, and lots of people doing wonderful yoga and looking fantastic and eating their chia seeds. And I just thought, they're nailing it. They don't need my help.
They can read the Perfect Nutritionist,
yes,
right?
Exactly. And then you've got the people that eat junk food all the time and whatever at the other end of the spectrum, and they don't care about what I'm talking about. But there's this huge swathe of people in the middle, the people in the gray, the imperfect people, I like to call them, that I felt weren't really being catered for. And so that's who I wanted to talk to.
Got it.
The mainstream, make it accessible. And when you look at the book, it's very engaging, it's very graphics. It's kind of what you need to know. Because also I've noticed myself, like, you spend all these years training and you learn all these complicated things. And then you kind of, people ask you questions at dinner parties or in clinic or whatever. And like, people are kind of interested, but really they just want to know what to do.
They just want to, that's how I describe this book, is that it's the one-stop shop what to do. And it is very easy to read. And everything just pops out at you. No one wants to read a dense book of, nutrition.
I just thought it's nice. It's 7 principles, which is catchy. Each chapter is really clear. There's like clear tips and advice. And then each chapter ends with action points. So if you can't be bothered to read the chapter, you can get the bullet points right at the end.
So come on, tell me about the 7 principles.
So the first one is eat whole foods. Now, most people might know what a whole food is, but they might not actually, when you dig down to it, like, how do I identify that in a supermarket? And so it's kind of going a little bit into that, explaining what whole foods are, how to identify them, making it really, really simple. Tips on how to shop, things like that. Again, lots of tips, lots of action points, graphics, things like that. Next one, principle 2, is diversity. This is one I've noticed a lot of people struggle with, in terms of they can be really good about like eating their broccoli and carrots. But I eat loads of veg. I eat broccoli and carrots all the time. Yeah, but it's also about that diversity in there, because now we know that the more diverse your gut microbiome is, the better your overall health is. So yeah, it's like, can we add in another color? So you've got like the green and the orange, but can we add in a purple blue, like an aubergine? Or can we add in a red with tomatoes? Or these other colors? And that improves the diversity, because different colors of fruits and vegetables denote a different array of nutrients.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can see why that would be more difficult for people, because it's more like, what I need to cut out, and I just stayed eating the healthy stuff that I already.
Yes.
A lot of people eat sweet potato like it's going out of fashion, right?
Yes,
I'll have that sweet potato every day, whatever.
Which is great, but like, just what else can we add in there? Can we put some nuts and seeds on top, and add in another vegetable, and
it's being more imaginative about it. And I suppose that's where the recipes come in helpful.
The recipe, I suppose, is like doing it for you, but I want to empower the individual to do it for themselves, while also giving them the support to do that as well. Because I remember a lot of my experience at the beginning was like getting these very complicated like plans, but being like, how do I execute those? So I just wanted to, as I say to my clients all the time, I've done the hard work, so you don't have to. This took years out of my life, being sick and struggling. And so this is the book that I wish I'd had in my hand the day I realized I was sick.
Yeah, I love it. And they're the best ones to read.
Yeah. And I think I want it to be fun and engaging. And so that's principle 2. Okay, so principle 3 is what the fat. This is, again, a question I get a lot about, because historically a lot of government advice was like anti-fat. And we all now know we need fat. So it's swung the other way. So people are really confused. What fat should I cook with? What fats should I use? Can I eat unlimited amounts of fat? So I just wanted to clarify it, make it really simple for people. And again, action points, tips, it's nice and clear. So principle 4 is include more fermented foods, prebiotic and probiotic foods.
This is an interesting one, actually, because when I was flicking through, I was particularly interested to know what were those types of food, because if I think about prebiotic and probiotic, I'm taking the supplements, not the actual. I didn't know what the actual foods were that aided this.
People are generally quite confused about what these are, and they're so important. More and more, the research is showing us how important these are. But you're right, people think that like, oh, should I be taking a supplement for these? Whereas actually, as with most things, as with all things pretty much, it's better to get it from food.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? So really being clear about what fermented foods are. And again, there's caveats to all these things. Like, for example, people think, oh, sauerkraut, fermented food, brilliant. And they go to the supermarket and I see my clients buying all this sauerkraut and stuff. And I'm like, can I just check the brand? And then it's been pasteurized, which means it's lost all that beneficial bacteria. So there's just little things that you need to be aware of.
It can be a bit of a minefield, all this, can't it?
Yeah, but I think it's that combination of one, having done it myself, and two, having seen clients for years and years doing it themselves. I can help like point out all the kind of pitfalls, make it really, really simple, and just make sure that these adjustments to your lifestyle are as painless and easy as possible, so you can just get on with enjoying your food, living your life, being healthy, and not have to think about it too much. So yeah, that one's an interesting one, and I think will become more and more important as the research increases in terms of like our gut microbiome. Another thing most people really struggle with is breakfast. A lot of people tend to miss breakfast. And that, again, introducing breakfast into my clients' diet is crazily one of the things that they find improves their diet the most.
Interesting.
Because it tends to be that the more we can consume at the beginning of the day, the more efficiently and effectively our body can break down and absorb it and utilize it. And also the less we tend to eat at the end of the day. Now, everyone's different. This can totally vary person to person, which is why try it out, experiment it, see if it works for you. Works for some people, doesn't work
Makes
for others.
sense. And so number 5 is reduce refined carbohydrates.
Yes. So this is, I would say, one of the biggest kind of challenges in modern day society is the huge rise in processed foods that offer very little nutritional benefit. We call them calorie rich, but nutrient poor.
Got it.
And it's a real shame because they're also very easy to buy. You know,
what is like the pastas and it's the starchy stuff, isn't it?
I'm more talking like kind of ready-made like crisps and cakes and buns and things like that. And you know, they're available at every single corner shop because they're lovely. They're nice and addictive. They give you that hit, that high, and then the low, and you want another one. And they're everywhere. And again, calorie rich and nutrient poor. So it's trying to educate people a bit around that, and then also empower them with an alternative, which is the complex carbohydrate, which is more your whole grains and everything like that, which hopefully people understand what they are because they will have had that understanding from principle 1, which is what a whole food is. And I really go into some detail about like processed, ultra processed, and different levels of refinement so people can understand that and understand what they're choosing and the decisions that they're making.
Makes sense. Okay. And then liquids, number 6, be aware of liquids.
Liquids. So this is an interesting one. Again, one of the most common things that I see, one of the most common challenges I see in clinic is people don't drink enough water.
Yeah.
Cue everyone in the room taking a sip of water.
I mean, it honestly is it's the classic people going through their life like feeling suboptimal and just that becoming their normal default and not really necessarily knowing that they can even feel better. But the amount of people that are just dehydrated on a day-to-day basis, and so many things can be solved from just drinking more water, is crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think it's just people forget, they're not in the habit. I also go and explain this a little bit more because people think, oh my God, I've got to have my 8 to 10 glasses a day, my 2 liters a day. And actually that's overall, it's also water in food. I don't know, you might have noticed
I see what you mean.
When you're really dehydrated, you really start craving like oranges and melon and stuff because there's also liquid in food. So it's also important to remember that. But it's a great thing to try and aim for, you know, get that jug by your desk, make sure that there's a glass by your bed. Just start trying to include it more as a habit. So just little tips and tricks that people can do, like even something as simple as buying a carafe just to have on your desk at work or wherever you do work if it is at home, just to remind you little cues and
just
prompts.
Have it there.
So it's amazing. It's amazing
accessible.
How people then start drinking more water. But yeah, I think another really important part of that chapter is the bit about SSBs, which are sugar sweetened beverages.
Okay.
So again, this is something that we've seen a huge proliferation of in supermarkets is, sugary drinks. I won't name any brands, but it's actually very difficult for your liver to break down sugar in liquid. So it's actually the worst form to consume sugar in.
Oh,
liquid
really? That's
form.
interesting.
Yeah. And people are replacing water with sweet fizzy drinks, and this is causing a lot of issues.
So it's worse to have a
sugar in a liquid than it is to just consume it as part of a food. And then also you're not getting a liquid in a water form, which again is not great.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of making people aware of things. And like, look, I have fizzy drinks from time to time, but it's about knowing like where the large proportion of your consumption should be. Because that's the thing I've noticed is like that actually most people they're doing great. They're doing great. It's just the proportions in which they're consuming things just needs some slight shifting.
So and then the last one, eat mindfully.
Eat mindfully, again, this kind of goes back to the importance of mental health. So people can be doing everything perfectly. You can be eating the perfect diet, but is your body breaking it down and absorbing it? They're two separate things. And so it's thinking about what is the environment in which we're eating. Food, there's a lot of research now to show that we break down our food better when we're obviously more relaxed, when we're eating maybe in company as part of a group, socializing, because the thing is, so you have two parts of you have an autonomic nervous system. It's got two parts, the sympathetic, which is your fight and flight response, and your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. And quite often when people are sat at their desk working, getting loads of emails in, they're activating that sympathetic response, that fight and flight response, which is historically meant to be from running away from a tiger, but now we're flooded with stressful emails and it's getting activated that way. And then they go straight from that to maybe scoffing down a sandwich at their desk while also absorbing more emails. And it's not the way that we're designed to consume food. Your body actually, the experience of preparing food is actually part of the digestive process. So things like salivating, for example, there are digestive enzymes in your saliva that help to digest. So actually cooking a meal is quite helpful in terms of preparing your body. Right, hey, I'm going to get some food now, getting the saliva going, getting the digestive enzymes going, the hydrochloric acid going, all these things that you need to break down and absorb your food, and activating that parasympathetic response, because also the parasympathetic and sympathetic responses are oppositional. Mm-hmm. So when one is high, the other is low. So you want to not be stressed when you're eating. And one trick I give my clients and also have in the book is that you should try and take 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth before you start eating. And it's amazing how you can feel the shift in your energy. And that switches you from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state, and then enables your body to hopefully break down and absorb.
And the digestive system is just starting to fire and wire the right way rather than being stressed.
Exactly. So it's also, I want to get people great results as well. And so focusing on the food is obviously a big part of it, but then you can be doing everything right and then be just woofing down a perfectly balanced meal, but really quickly in a really stressed state. And you're not going to be getting all the reward from that, from all that input.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
You can know all the right stuff you're meant to be doing, and then eating it the wrong way, or super stressed, or not being very good at sticking to habits. I mean, what about the whole habits thing?
In what respect?
In terms of like, you must have had clients in the past where, it's like, right, this is where you're going wrong. This is what I'm prescribing you. Here's a bit of a meal plan. This is what you want to build. This is what you shouldn't be eating. This is what you should be eating. But then either they're eating it when they're super strict, in the wrong environment and not being mindful about it. So it's not really working. Digestive, it doesn't matter what you put in it. Digestive system is not working anyway very well. Or they just can't do it. They can't do what you're asking them to do. They can't break the bad habits and they can't create the new good habits. So what would you say to that?
So this is actually really interesting that you raised this, because I think this was initially what I was finding helpful about my practice, because I'd been through that experience, having been an adult and then having to change everything and kind of restructure it in a way. I was inadvertently putting forward in my clinic when I was treating people tips and tricks that I had learned. But actually really what it was about was how to form good habits. And so this is why I've really expanded and built out my clinic in terms of I've done a lot of like reading and research around like the psychology behind like why we make certain decisions, because there is so much like, albeit sometimes confusing, but good information out there. And we kind of all know like, vegetables are good, or maybe shouldn't drink so much.
Yeah,
like,
the bigger problem is actually the implementation.
Why are people making not great decisions when they kind of know better? That to me is fascinating. And so that's why I think like the tips in the book are really helpful because I always try and anchor them to something that people already do. You know, something as simple as like placing a water jug, like I was saying, a carafe on your desk where you work is a cue to your mind to drink water. Now you're already sat at that desk working. It's quite painless for you to just put a jug of water there. And I really try and also emphasize it in the book as well. Like, it's not about doing everything all at once immediately. Like you kind of, it's a gradual process. And also it's going to go up and down. It's quite interesting. So in my clinic now, I only run 12 or 24-week courses. So you can only come and see me for 12 weeks or 24 weeks.
Okay.
And it's quite interesting because every single client, I'm probably not going to say it now, but every single client without reservation always says, you know, because I'm looking at their food diaries every week and stuff like that, and we're obviously talking through it and stuff. And they go, "Oh, do you know what? This was just a really unfortunate time. I'm not usually like this. It caught me out. This 12 weeks was just at a bad time, or this 24 weeks, it just happens to be at a bad moment.
It's never the right time.
It's never the right time. It's never the right moment because life happens all the time, you know. And so it's not about getting everything perfect. And again, that kind of feeds back to why I'm the imperfect nutritionist. I really think it's about forgiving yourself, allowing yourself to make mistakes, taking the pressure off. And also it's about the overall pattern. It's not about what you do at one meal or one day or, you know, even 1 month. It's like, what does that look like over years?
It's creating, it's not about a diet for a certain amount of time. It's creating a new way of living.
It's just about sustainable change. Everything in here you can do forever for the rest of your life. And
that's why I'm guessing, well, if you're trying to create those new habits, it's almost better to just concentrate on 1 or 2 things at a time and make them easy and try and get those and then layer on more and more and more. And then you sort of, it's playing the long game basically, right? And that's helping you make sustainable change, like you said. Talk to me about the pooing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was surprised to see that. I was wondering whether we...
But it's so important, you know, it's a very informative, like real world guide. And the thing is, most people don't know how to poo. And we all
So what
poo.
are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong?
So the way that the toilets are designed in the Western world are not the optimal way of pooing. It's actually in a really not a great angle. There's a diagram in the book.
I can't find I did see it earlier. But...
I was really lucky. I worked with an incredible graphic design team while making the book. So everything's like really easy to digest, easy to understand. Like it's not just blocks of text. There's lots of like graphs on there and tests.
No, I can see that. It's really it's short form. It's snappy. It's
that was really important to me.
Super digestible.
Engaging, and that people could interact with it. And
lots of lists and recipes and pictures and action points and the summaries for the super lazy people. That just want to flick to the end of the chapter.
So there is a lovely diagram of how to poo. And basically it's about getting the knees above the hips. So whether you do that either by squatting, which we can't really do because we all have high toilets in this country, or by having a stool under your feet.
But hang on, what is that? What's going wrong at how we normally do
So
that?
it raises the knees above the hips, which allows the sphincter to relax and open.
Got it.
So you can release your giddies to the world.
Okay. And if that's not happening, what's going wrong?
Then you're not clearing properly.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like, it's a partial poo.
Poo is literally, you're trying to get that stuff out of your system. If you're not having a complete bowel movement, then...
Okay, I'm with you.
But that's the principles. I think they cover all the bases. They're great fundamentals. If you do that, you're like 80% of the way there to great health.
All these principles in the book, if you follow those.
And the other 20%, I always say, is like the stuff that is like choice stuff, life stuff. Like, do you know what? I still want to have a drink. I still want to stay up late. I still want to have my cake. And a lot of people, this is why when I'm working with clients in clinic, quite often we get them to such a stage with their health where they're like, I feel awesome. I'm sleeping better. I've got loads of energy. I feel great. And like, I don't really care about the other 20%. It's just
it's just made such a big difference. They're happy with it.
It's probably less than 20%. I'm being dramatic. It's probably more like 5. That getting things perfect.
I know what you mean. It's like never going
out,
never having anything naughty.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me about alcohol. It's obviously such a big one, and that's such a sort of, especially in this country, so many things revolve around alcohol, and that's probably that last bit, that 5%. It's like, no alcohol, don't go out, don't put yourself in that situation. But how bad is it? And what's your best pieces of advice to working with the whole alcohol thing?
So, again, there's a bit of conjecture on this. So I would say, like, physiologically, the actual act of drinking alcohol, like it has no nutritional benefit. It's definitely detrimental. But, and I caveat this, but there's also some studies that have shown that having a small, which again, we don't do a very good job of in this country, having a small glass of red wine in the evening relaxes you, engages in conversation. And also, maybe it doesn't have to be a small glass of red wine, just the act of sharing a drink with a friend or a loved one.
That's a slowing down thing again that you're talking about. If you have that with a meal and you enjoy it more, etc.
It's like balancing, I suppose, like the direct physical aspects of it with the psychological aspects, which are still physical. Like overall, stress is such a powerful part in our health that actually, if sharing a bottle of wine with your loved one or going out and having a drink with a friend, ultimately, you know, obviously enhances your life and enjoyment and experience and lowers your stress levels, that is so much more beneficial than ultimately overall than the small negative detrimental effects of
like
alcohol.
Not, you know, being super strict, like, oh, I mustn't do any of this and I must keep tension
fun
in my body and
that's not a life.
Yeah.
But I think it's also helping people to, you know, helping drinkers to also maybe consume less alcohol should they want to as well. And there's been a huge rise in like great non-alcoholic drinks, be it non-alcoholic beers or spirits or whatever. And actually, for quite a few of these brands, their major consumers are alcohol drinkers who just want to consume less alcohol. You know, so I think it's also just helping support people to make the decisions that they want to make, but maybe don't have enough information to at the moment. So I go into a bit of detail about alcohol in the book.
No, I think the alcohol page is really interesting. So are there any other, I've got misnomers here, you know, that's obviously a big one in this world. Like, are there any obvious ones that people are just are massive contradictions and myths?
One's just kind of sprung into my head, which is actually, it's interesting. Whenever I say to someone I'm a nutritionist, one of the first things they say, do you do allergy testing? Do you do allergy testing? There's like a real misunderstanding of what allergies are and also what you can really test for as well. So there's all these like amazing kind of test kits and stuff on the market. Oh, they tell you, oh, you're allergic to this, don't eat this. And like quite often, usually when you consume and people come back and they're like, it's weird because I eat broccoli all the time and it says I'm allergic to broccoli. And it's like, well, that's actually because like if you eat a lot of broccoli, your antigens for broccoli are probably quite high, rightly so. And that's what the test is picking up on rather than you actually having an allergy to broccoli. So without overcomplicating it too much, there are IgG tests, which are not evidence-based and not to be trusted. There are actually very few things that you can like 100% test for IgE tests, and they're much more limited, things like nuts and shellfish.
So if someone came to see you as a client, would you do
the IgE or the IgG? I
wouldn't
know.
What test would you do on them?
I would do the proper like gold standard evidence-based IgE test, but I wouldn't do the IgG test because there's just no evidence to support it.
But so the one you would do, is that for things that people are allergic to, for
actually
example?
Allergic
intolerant.
To. Yeah.
Intolerances
are more difficult to pinpoint, and it's much more about doing an elimination diet. Because that's the thing, people love a quick fix. Obviously, it's so much easier just to like, you know, you can get it sent to your house, you take a pinprick, and then you get the results, and it's like,
tell me the two things that I shouldn't be eating, and then everything's solved.
People love a result, and and the thing is, that's why like health, actually good, sustainable health, is not particularly sexy. It's not particularly glamorous. That's why I've got a lot of very fantastic graphics in there and beautiful photography, because these are ultimate truths. And you're just going to have to like work a little bit at it every single day.
Yeah, I think that, that is such a big one. I'm speaking from experience as well. I had the classic, you know, not nearly as badly as you, but fatigue, bloating, brain fog, and you know, you keep going until it sort of starts impacting your life. It's like, shit, you know, I actually need to just get this sorted out now. And then, you know, you go down the rabbit hole and you do tests and things. You're looking for like, oh, I must be allergic to one or two specific things. What are those things? Or you start eliminating lots of different foods. And
Which is dangerous, by the way. Because the thing is, you don't want to start eliminating foods or whole food groups, because that, you know, I was talking, principle 2 is all about diversity. We want as many different types of foods in our diet as possible to support that diverse gut microbiome for good overall health. And so people are cutting out this thing left, right, and center and da-da-da. which is really limiting their diet. And I see some clients that are on incredibly limited diets, all because they've done this test and that test and stuff.
Well, and you're trying to get to the bottom of it. And it's
course.
super hard and stressful as well, trying to sort of, be, only eat these 2 or 3 different things to try and figure it all out. But really.
But 9 times out of 10, there's usually an underlying issue that is driving that.
Exactly. It's all the 1% added up. So it's really, it wasn't until you start. And I think this is why so many people think, oh, I must be gluten intolerant or something like this. And then, they think, I think everyone's looking for, I've got this symptom, so there must be a specific problem causing that symptom. Whereas a lot of and there might be, I'm guessing, there might be intolerances or there might be allergies, but certainly for me, it was just like sorting everything out and just doing things a bit better and slowing down and probably doing a lot of the things that you talk about in the book. And then all of a sudden, you kind of just wake up one day and you think, oh God, yeah, things are feeling and looking better. And it's like, how did I end up there? You're just changing how you're doing things.
Gluten's a big one. People are like, oh, I've cut out all gluten. And actually, a lot of people don't need to be doing that. Obviously, if you're celiac or you have gluten sensitivity, that's totally different. But again, most people don't. They've got some kind of underlying issue that actually once you help resolve by improving the overall diet, they then can tolerate gluten perfectly happily. And also what most people find, they're like, but I cut out gluten and now I feel amazing. It's like, actually what happened is they cut out those simple carbohydrates that I was talking about in Principle 5, which, highly processed, nutrient poor, calorie rich, and then they're replacing them because they're suddenly not consuming these, gluten, simple carbohydrates with more nutritionally
more whole foods.
Dense
That's
foods,
that is interesting.
Rather than it being the gluten. That happens a lot. It's like, okay, it must be the gluten, but you've also added in tons of vegetables, amazing lean proteins. You're adding loads of complex carbohydrates in.
That makes
drinking loads of water.
sense.
It's nothing to do with that. It must be the gluten. Yeah, quite often. And so this is the kind of propagation of certain myths, because so often people cut things out, but they're actually improving a lot of other things at the same time. Because, when you're on a health kick, you don't just do necessarily just one thing. You also maybe start working out a bit more too and doing all these other things. And I think there can be an oversimplification. Like we love as human beings simplify, and look at maybe one thing, but actually it's about that overall picture. It's about that orchestra I was talking about earlier.
I mean, that's really interesting. It's definitely where I ended up. It's not one specific thing. Oh God, I must be intolerant to this. I must have an allergy to that, but I didn't have anything. It's just like, it's just doing it's being more hydrated. It's eating less of that carbohydrate stuff. It's having less dairy. Hang on. I wanted to ask you about Oatly, these Oatly drinks, like the barista one, like my wife and I are obsessed with the Oatly drinks. Like, oh, this is amazing. Make great coffees and tea or whatever. But someone told me that's like, that's terrible for you, apparently.
So that's another thing I get a lot of questions on, actually, is like non-dairy milk. So I did a video on it on my TikTok and on my Instagram as well, actually. And just again, like, there's no judgment here. I'm just empowering people with the information, and they can make their own decisions. So I talk about getting all the different milks, be it almond milk, coconut milk, oat milk, and then comparing the protein content, the sugar content. And also, frustratingly, it varies brand to brand as well. So the best thing you can do is just, again, this is another thing I talk about a lot in the book, label reading. I've got a whole section on label reading, because it's, how do you read a label? But being able to turn a packet over and look at the label and make a decision for yourself.
And suss out, instead of the nice marketing, oh, it must be this.
Yeah. But isn't that empowering to know that you're in a supermarket and you're like, oh, I quite like the look of this, and just be able to take it, turn the packet over, look at it and be like, yeah, this is what I want to consume, or no, this isn't.
Or call bullshit on it, for example.
Exactly. Because again, this is another thing I noticed in my clinic, is that I'll give people their food plans, and then they come back and they think they've made all these great decisions and stuff, and we'll literally just go, let's turn over the packet of this, and like, oh God, I didn't realize, because the branding's all so lovely and nice and
they
stuff.
They thought they were eating or drinking the right stuff.
And I think that's where it actually was really upsetting for me, when I saw a lot of people really trying so hard to make good decisions for their health, but being misled through marketing or lack of accurate information. And so that's, again, something I wanted to help correct.
This is really important, because these drinks, a lot of time it's these drinks that are the biggest, I think they mislead you, right? I think if you look at some of those brands, whether they're almond or oat drinks, it makes it look like it's 90% almond juice or oat juice or whatever. But you turn it on the back and it's only got like 6%.
Yeah.
And it's got everything else is a load of other crap. And it's like, it's actually quite annoying. It's like you're trying to deceive, like you brand yourself as this like super healthy drink and I've been trusting you. And actually, who am I to, be the, figure it all out on the back and know what all these different things mean. But it's actually, then you get to the bottom of it and you realize that it's super bad for you. It's not what they.
That's why it's so much
be.
about empowering the individual. Everyone can be their own like little nutritionist for themselves, and like learning how to label read is so empowering.
And you got that in the book as well.
That's in the book.
Great. I might be looking at that later.
It's important, But I mean, as we've said, like there are general rules in terms of like less ingredients, the better probably, and you want them to be ingredients that you recognize as well. Like if you can't pronounce it, it's probably not something ideally you want to be consuming.
Yeah. But how about you, Jen? How healthy are you with your food? How much do you stick to this?
Well, I'm the imperfect nutritionist. So I learned very quickly in my nutrition career that I needed a kind of caveat, get out of jail free card for, because I love my fish and chips and mac and cheese and steak and wine and all of that, of which I actually think is perfectly healthy and there is totally room for in a really healthy, balanced diet. But yeah, I definitely get a lot of people going, if I took a photo of you eating this right now, would it just destroy your career? And I'm like, no. Immediately launch off on some diatribe about the fact that it's like, well, actually, we need to redefine what we think health is because this should be considered healthy. And
straight into your elevator pitch.
Exactly. But I can't tell you how many people this happens less now, but certainly a few years ago, I say I'm a nutritionist and I'd get to dinner party and they'd be like, I'm so sorry. I don't have any vegan options. Like, is it okay if you have whatever? And I'm like, why is to be vegan the definition of to be healthy? Like there's that association.
There.
Yeah, exactly. So this is another thing that I really wanted to do, like through my social media channels, through the TikTok, through Instagram, through my book, is to kind of redefine what health is and normalize health. Like health is for everyone. And it shouldn't be this kind of like elitist, inaccessible, unsustainable thing. I want to shift it back to the middle.
It's all about balance, isn't it?
Balance. There we go.
Balance is the buzzword.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What else have...
Sorry, I was going to say, but it's what people's idea of balance is.
Yeah, that's very true.
That really changes.
There's different thresholds,
yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, I have very big debates with my parents about, they think they have a very kind of balanced
We'll have just one bottle
diet.
of wine, not two. So.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But, so yeah, what balance, as I said earlier, like most people are doing everything right. It's just the proportions in which they're consuming things are not optimal. And that's what we want to do. We want to optimize things.
You talk about that in the book as well, the proportions.
I do. And again, lots of lovely graphics and like what a plate should look like. Because most people don't understand like what their plate should look like. And I do this when I'm starting out with my clients, show them what a plate should be, which is like half fruits and vegetables, ideally more vegetables than fruit, a quarter complex carbohydrates, and a quarter protein. Now that's a kind of a bit of a rigid approach. It's like, but it's something to aim for every single meal. And it suddenly makes you readjust because you're like, okay, do you know what? A lot of people don't include enough protein and they're not including enough veg as well. Like even now when I go out, I struggle in the majority of restaurants to consume things in the proportions that are optimal for your body. Like if you think about it, kind of usually it's like the meat is at the center and then you've got the carbs and the
veg is a bit of an afterthought.
Like a garnish. It was so funny. And look, I love the Germans. I haven't got anything against Germans. But I recently came back from Munich and I could not believe how like they just don't consume like vegetables at all. It was really hard to find a vegetable. Maybe I had a bad experience in the few places I went to. But I asked for poached eggs with some mushrooms and tomatoes. And it was like a quarter of a tomato cup with like
just to make it look pretty.
And I'm like, this should be over half the plate.
That's interesting. I mean, that was definitely an aha moment that I had when I learned about those proportions. You're like, okay, well, I can still have the spaghetti or I can still have the steak or whatever, but just, dial up the veg on the plate and dial down those pieces. And it's still kind of, you can still have those things. It's just about the proportions.
Exactly. Which is so simple because then it's like, well, I'm still eating exactly what I want to eat. I'm just doing it in a slightly different way. You love your pizza? Cool. Can you have a big green salad beforehand?
Maybe just have a few slices of pizza with something else rather than just the whole pizza.
And then what happens is if you tend to, this is a kind of trick that I use. I tend to I eat my salad first, my big green salad. And then I also consume less pizza afterwards because I've filled up on the veg. So it's kind of, it's a double whammy. I'm not overeating, and I'm still enjoying the thing that I wanted to eat in the
Yeah, that's a
first
good
place.
hack. I like that. I like that.
Just things like that.
Where are you on the whole meat eating thing?
Meat eating.
Mhm.
I consume meat 100%. I eat everything. I would say red meat is something that I would recommend is limited. So ideally not to consume more than one portion of red meat a week.
Really?
Yeah, red meat is pro-inflammatory, and also if you're consuming red meat, it's ideal. It's good to try and do it with also some green leafy vegetables, because then you've got those antioxidants in there as well at the same time as the red meat, and they work nicely together to kind of protect you from the inflammatory effects of the meat.
Interesting.
But also ideally you'd be using those antioxidants in the green leafies to benefit your body, not just balance out
Counteract
the red meat. But look, I mean, I love steak. I love proper spag bowl, even though I use turkey nowadays or lentils or whatever. So yeah, the red meat's the only one, and trying to kind of prioritize more consumption of lean meats. So turkey, chicken, and then also fish, ideally wild fish if you can, although I know that's kind of hard to access for some people, and it's also a bit more expensive. I'm a real kind of, I try and really champion if possible, but if not, again, I don't want people to beat themselves up if they can't financially go there, but to kind of lower the consumption of animal products, but increase the quality of the products. So to kind of go organic with their meats, and fish if possible, as much as possible.
Is that because it's got less bad stuff in it, or because the higher quality's got more good stuff in it, or kind of a bit of both?
I think a bit
I
of
mean,
both.
the chicken, for example,
And
right?
look, organic is not the be all and end all. There are farmers that raise incredible
Free
animals
range
in
chicken,
wonderful environments that are full of nutrients and lovely, but just don't have the certification. So again, it's just about questioning the provenance of your food a little bit more, which I think we're getting better at as consumers. I think trying to like buy local is always good, because then also it's that idea of getting it from the farm to the fork as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
The same goes with vegetables, trying to eat locally, trying to eat seasonally. These are all like things that are really, I don't talk about too much in the book, because I just want people to get the fundamentals right. And to me, these are more like tweaking things. It's more important to consume vegetables than it is to get them like organic, again, fresh, frozen, tinned, mix it up. It's all good. Just consume these things rather than not, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to get too hard up on that.
That's why I love the idea of the book so much, because it is a bit of a one-stop shop. It's like, here, go and do that. It covers so many different bases. It's really, really digestible and easy to read. And then if you need any tweaking after that, come and see you.
Yeah, or buy the second book.
Have we got another one?
Got to leave space for a second.
Two-part series.
These are definitely the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to branch out into other areas next, provenance, and then also a bit more around like mental health and also female health issues as well. I think kind of being a woman, and it seems to be a majority of so women struggle more with their digestion than men on the whole.
Okay.
So I would say a larger proportion of my clients are women than men. I would say definitely a larger proportion of my followers are women than men. Although my messaging, I think, appeals to men, because it's like you can still do what you want to do, and it's not going to change anything. But yeah, so it tends to be much more women that kind of are interested in this and approach me, which tends to be because we live in this reactionary health system. It's like, when is the first time something's most likely to go wrong with a woman's health? And it's probably going to be something to do with periods first, and then maybe pregnancy or fertility, and then menopause. And so there's a big like female health element to nutrition, which again, these are great fundamentals, but there's a lot more fine tuning.
That's a sort of bolt on. You could write a whole other book on that.
Yeah, again, and I really would like to as well, because I feel like female health is so important, and it's something that has been kind of really kept in the shadows. But I think what I want to do is I really want to, again, I've said this a lot, empower people. But I really want to empower people to be able to kind of go out into the world and make these decisions for themselves, because you can have like meal delivery boxes till the cows come home, or all the, meal prep and stuff, but life is always going to get in the way. Like I said, with my 12 and 24 week courses that I run at my clinic, everyone without a reservation always says, oh, I just got caught out. It's just a bad week and stuff. Something will happen. You'll oversleep. This will run late. Life happens and gets in the way. And what you want to be able to do is have the information in your head that you can go into a supermarket, local corner shop, supermarket, wherever, and pick things that are going to work for you.
Yeah, and the go-to, the simple stuff, right?
Exactly. Or like be in a restaurant and be able to order off the menu and and confidently be able to order off the menu in a way that like is, well, firstly, I mean, well, it depends what you're trying to do. But some people, they only eat out once a month or something. And so just, have what the hell you like. But if you're someone as part of your job has to eat out like 4 or 5 times a week or something.
You know how to navigate it.
Yeah, you need to be able to like choose on a menu something that's going to work for your body, and that's where like understanding in like an easy accessible way is really helpful in the longer term for creating that sustainable change.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Jen? You've got an exciting book launch coming up in a couple of weeks.
Book launch, which I'm really excited about. And then lots of really exciting literary festivals coming up throughout the year as well. I love cooking, so I can also do all the cooking shows and demonstrations.
You're going to be doing that, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Loads of talks as well coming up. I've got like doing a grand tour of England, going around various bookshops and.
But you enjoy getting in front of people, and
I love it.
You're very personable and seeing the problems out on Main Street you're trying to solve, right?
Exactly. I think it all fundamentally comes back to the fact that this health experience that I had, I really wanted to firstly make sure that people had access to information that I didn't in a fun, engaging way. Like I really wish at that moment someone had given me this book. And then I would have not only not got sick, but then I also would have like gone on and been able to have like loads of energy and not worry about things so much, better sleep, better all of this. But then I also wouldn't have gone on this journey, which ultimately kind of also led me to wanting to change the way that we practice healthcare in this country from reactionary to preventative. If people implement the information in this book, they are going to help prevent themselves from getting sick.
Got it. Okay. It's all about prevention. Prevention's better than cure.
It's helping to optimize, look, our genes are our genes, but you can turn genes on and off. God, that's a whole different conversation. But good nutrition is such an important part of overall health. If there was a pill that you could take that would improve or support every single illness in the world, like the pharmaceutical industry would be all over it. And yet here we have food, diet. Diet can help support or improve every single illness. And yet it's something that's totally overlooked as a tool. And so I want to help give people that tool.
I think it's
in as colourful way as possible.
I think it's great. And I think that, you're doing something fairly unique, the Imperfect Nutritionist. You're making it super digestible. And that, I think that's what people want.
But digestible.
Easy
to digest. That's exactly what I wanted it to be. But I wanted it to be fun and engaging and really non-judgmental, accessible, sustainable.
No, look, I think it's great. And Jen, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Good luck with
Thank you for having
the book
me.
launch.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back one day.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.